Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's story. In this episode, we continue following James and Diep as they take a meaningful step toward their upcoming wedding. Not inside a hall or behind closed doors, but out on the streets where their lives were shaped. Today isn't about excitement or celebration like yesterday. Instead, it's about responsibility, gratitude, and facing the people who truly matter. As James and Diep walk door to door, delivering the last wedding invitations, they also confront unfinished emotions. Old memories stay until the end to feel how these simple gestures turn their wedding from an event into a deeply earned milestone. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to us. The morning air is still cool when James slowly parks his motorbike at the edge of a quiet street. The town hasn't fully woken up yet. A few shops are just starting to lift their metal shutters, and the sound of brooms sweeping dust and fallen leaves echoes softly along the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows, reminding them that the day is only beginning. Diep steps down behind James, carefully adjusting her bag before pulling it close to her chest. Inside are dozens of wedding invitations, neatly stacked, their corners aligned perfectly, tied together with a pale ribbon she chose after spending nearly an hour debating colors. She looks down at them for a moment, then lets out a slow breath. "So, today's the day," she says quietly. "We're really going out to invite everyone." James nods, his smile warm but slightly tense. "Yeah. When we were designing these, it felt simple. Pick the font, choose the paper, check the spelling." He glances at the invitations. But now that we're actually handing them out, it feels like we're making an announcement to the whole world. Diep smiles faintly. "Because we are." James chuckles, rubbing the back of his neck. "You always know how to make things sound heavier than they already are." "But it is heavy," she replies gently, "in a good way. This is us saying we're ready." They start walking toward their first stop, the quiet street slowly filling with life. Vendors push carts toward the market. Neighbors greet each other with nods and familiar smiles. The rhythm of daily life feels comforting, grounding. Their first stop is a small stationery shop James used to visit when he was younger. The bell above the door rings softly as they step inside. An elderly woman behind the counter looks up, blinking in surprise. "James?" she asks, squinting slightly before recognition settles in. "Is that really you?" James bows politely. "Yes, Auntie. It's been a while." "And who is this?" she asks, already smiling. "This is Diep," James says. "My fiancé." Diep bows slightly. "Nice to meet you." The woman's eyes widen. "Fiancé." She laughs softly. "I heard rumors around the market, but I didn't know if they were true." James reaches into Diep's bag and carefully pulls out an invitation, handing it over with both hands. "We wanted to invite you in person. Our wedding is next month." The woman takes the envelope slowly, almost reverently. "In person. That's rare these days." She studies the names printed on the front, then looks up with a gentle smile. "I'll be there. I watched you grow up after all." As they step back outside, James exhales deeply, shoulders relaxing. "That wasn't scary at all," Diep says, amused. "I was nervous for nothing," James admits. One down. They continue walking as the town becomes busier. The sun climbs higher, warming the streets. People begin to notice the invitations in Diep's hands, curiosity flickering in their eyes. Their next stop is a small cafe near the market. The moment they step inside, conversations slow. "Wait," someone says, pointing lightly. "Are those wedding invitations?" James lifts the stack slightly, smiling. "Yes, we're getting married." A wave of laughter and applause spreads through the cafe. Someone teases James about finally settling down. Another asks when the big day is. Diep answers patiently, moving from table to table, handing out invitations one by one. "Please come," she says each time. "It would mean a lot to us." Some people promise they'll be there no matter what. Others joke about what gift they should bring. The atmosphere is warm, full of genuine happiness. When they step back outside, Diep lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "That was a lot," she says, smiling, "but I liked it." James nods. "I didn't realize how many people were waiting to hear this news." They head toward an older residential area, where the streets narrow and houses sit closer together. James's pace slows unconsciously. Diep notices immediately. "This area makes you uneasy, doesn't it?" "A little," he admits. "A lot of people here know my past. Not all of it was good." She reaches for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Today isn't about the past. It's just an invitation." They stop in front of a modest house with a faded blue gate. James hesitates, then knocks. A middle-aged man opens the door, surprise crossing his face. "James?" the man says slowly. "It's been a long time." "Yes," James replies. "I came to invite you to my wedding." He hands over an invitation. The man studies it quietly, then nods. "I'll be there. I'm glad you found your own path." As they walk away, James feels something loosen in his chest. Not everything needs closure. Some things just need acceptance. By midday, the sun is high, and the stack of invitations has noticeably thinned. Their steps grow heavier. They stop at a roadside stall, sitting on low plastic chairs with cold drinks in hand. "My legs hurt," Diep admits, stretching slightly. "But I don't regret today at all." James smiles at her. "Me neither. This feels meaningful." She nods, because we're not just planning a wedding. We're reconnecting with people. We're reminding ourselves where we come from. They continue through Diep's old neighborhood in the afternoon. Children run past them laughing. Neighbors greet Diep warmly, clearly happy to see her. She chats easily, handing out invitations, laughing at familiar jokes. James watches her quietly, feeling grateful. Seeing her so at ease reassures him more than words ever could. As the sky begins to soften into late afternoon colors, only a few invitations remain. "We can finish the rest tomorrow," Diep says gently. "Today was enough." James nods, walking home side by side, tired but content. He realizes that handing out wedding invitations isn't just a task. Each envelope carries a piece of their journey, every step they took, every choice they made to arrive here together. And as evening settles over the town, there's a calm certainty between them. This wedding isn't just a celebration of love, but a quiet promise of a shared life they're ready to protect. The second day starts quieter than the first, like the town is giving them room to breathe. The sky is still gray from last night's rain, and the air feels clean in a way that makes every sound sharper. Water dripping from a gutter, a broom brushing the pavement, a distant motorbike passing slowly, like it doesn't want to interrupt anything. James wakes up before Diep this time, but he doesn't get up right away. He just lies there, thinking about yesterday. How easy it was to smile when people cheered for them. How light his chest felt when strangers called out congratulations. And then he thinks about today. Today isn't for the crowd. Today is for the few doors they saved on purpose. Diep sits up a minute later, immediately reaching for her bag, like she's afraid the day will slip away if she doesn't hold on to it. She pulls out the remaining invitations and lines them up neatly on the table. James leans over. How many? Diep taps each envelope once with her finger. 7. James nods, as if that number has a certain weight. 7 serious ones? Diep gives him a small smile. 7 that we actually need to show up for. They eat breakfast slowly. No big talk, no joking. It's the kind of calm that feels earned. 2 people on the same page without needing to read out loud. When they step outside, Diep adjusts the strap of her bag and looks at James. "We're walking again?" she asks. James nods. "Yeah. Yesterday felt like running on excitement. Today, I don't want to rush." They start with the first name on the list. A former mentor of James, someone who once pulled him aside and told him that pride and anger won't build a life. Only consistency will. The man runs a small hardware shop now, the kind of place that always smells like oil and metal and wood dust. The shop's half open. A radio plays low in the background. The mentor looks up, squints, then freezes. "James?" he says, like he's testing whether the moment is real. James smiles. "It's me." The older man wipes his hands on a rag and walks closer. "You disappeared." "I know," James says honestly. "I didn't disappear because I wanted to. I just needed to find my footing." Diep stands quietly beside him, letting James have this moment. James holds out the invitation with both hands. "I'm getting married. We're inviting people in person. I wanted you to have one from me." The mentor takes the envelope slowly, reading the names and date like he's reading a report card. He lets out a breath, then chuckles. "So you finally chose something steady." Diep smiles politely. "We're trying." The mentor looks up at her, eyes sharp but warm. "Keep him grounded," he says, then glances back to James. "I'll come. I'm proud of you, even if I never said it before." When they step back onto the street, James's shoulders are visibly looser. Diep bumps him gently with her elbow. "Okay, first one done." James exhales. That one felt like closing a door without slamming it. Their second stop is someone Diep insisted on visiting. Not a relative, not a close friend, but a woman who once helped her quietly when she was struggling, offering work, offering food, offering kindness without asking for explanations. The woman opens the door and freezes when she sees Diep. "Diep," she whispers, then quickly pulls her into a short hug. The kind that says, "I've missed you, but I didn't know how to reach you." Diep laughs softly, embarrassed and touched at the same time. "I came to invite you to our wedding." She hands over the invitation. The woman's eyes blur almost immediately as she reads the names. "You're really getting married," she says, voice cracking. I always hoped you'd get a calm life. James bows slightly. Please come. We'd be happy to have you there. The woman nods fast. I'll come. And if you need help, chairs, food, setup, tell me. I'll show up early. As they walk away, Diep stays quiet for a while. James doesn't push her to speak. He just squeezes her hand once, letting that be enough. The third invitation is for an older couple known in the community. People who aren't loud, but whose presence makes everything feel more legitimate, like a blessing you didn't ask for, but desperately need. Their house is tidy, plants lined up in a row, the front steps swept clean. The husband answers first, then calls for his wife. They accept the invitation calmly, but the wife holds Diep's hand a moment longer than expected. Marriage is not the wedding day, the woman says gently. The wedding day is easy. Marriage is when you're tired, when you don't understand each other, when life gets complicated, and you still choose each other. James nods seriously. We hear you. Diep nods too. We're learning. The woman smiles. Good. Learn early. It saves you pain later. By late morning, they stop at a small stall for water. Diep rolls her shoulders like she's trying to shake off tension. James checks the envelopes. 4 left. Diep glances at the names. We're doing your old co-worker next? James nods. He's going to make jokes. Prepare yourself. They find the co-worker at a workshop on the edge of town, surrounded by tools and metal parts. The man wipes his hands and laughs the second he sees James. Look who finally comes around. James holds up the invitation. I'm getting married. The co-worker whistles dramatically. You? Married. He snatches the envelope, reads it, then his teasing face softens just a little. No jokes for a second. Good for you, man. You fought for your own life. You earned this. Diep smiles. Please come. Oh, I'll come, the man says. Then he points at James. But if you cry, I'm filming. James groans. You're impossible. They leave laughing, and for a few minutes the day feels lighter. Then they turn onto the next street, and the laughter fades on its own. The houses here are older, quieter. The air feels still, like the street is holding its breath. James's fingers tighten around the next envelope. Diep doesn't need to ask which one this is. She can see it in the way James walks. Slower, more careful, like every step is a decision. Diep speaks softly. Do you want me to wait outside? James shakes his head immediately. No. If I do this, you're with me. They stop at the gate. James stands there longer than necessary. He looks at the metal latch like it's a lock on an old memory. Then he inhales slowly and knocks. The door opens after a pause. A man stands there, older than James remembers. Hair gray, eyes tired but alert. Surprise flickers across his face. Then something unreadable hardens into stillness. James, the man says quietly. James doesn't pretend. He doesn't smile too much. He just speaks plainly. I'm getting married. I came to invite you. He holds out the invitation. The man doesn't take it right away. Silence stretches between them, thick with years of things that never got said properly. Diep stands steady beside James, her presence calm, not threatening. Finally, the man reaches out and takes the envelope. He looks down at it, reads the names, then exhales like he's been holding air in his lungs for too long. I didn't think you'd come, he admits. James swallows. I didn't know if I would. but I didn't want to carry this into my marriage. The man nods once, small and restrained. I'll come. James bows slightly. Thank you. No apology, no fight, no dramatic resolution, just a quiet agreement that matters more than a speech. When they walk away, Diep doesn't speak until they're several streets away. Then she asks gently, "How do you feel?" James thinks. Relieved, like I finally stopped avoiding a corner of my own life. Diep squeezes his hand. That's enough.